Hello, this is program 4. You may have noticed this picture on my wall in the previous program. It's a picture I have of the Holy Family. And you take a look at Joseph's face there, and Jesus, and Mary's. And it asks a question, how old was Joseph? How old was Mary? And what about their courtship, and how did that happen? What was their age? With Mary, she looks a little older in that icon, but in this picture from the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, she's depicted younger. We suppose Mary was in her teens when she got wed, when she got betrothed by Joseph. And she looks pretty young right here. In this particular portrait of Joseph, he looks like he's in his later 20s. Actually, Mary in this picture looks like she's in her later 20s, but the portrait's, I think, not exactly right because we're pretty much sure Mary was in her teens. But could Joseph also have been in his teens, or just a little older than Mary? Well, I was recently looking at the University Dayton site that has Catholic online studies and theology programs. And they were recently discussing that, yes, they're more in agreement that Joseph was more younger than older. And so, in their point of view, they said, imagine today going online to a Catholic dating service and saying, young, dedicated, chaste single seeks young, dedicated, chaste single. How many matches do you think you'd find? I just met somebody recently that found each other through online services, and they really did match up pretty well. And after so many times talking several states away to each other, they realized they needed to meet up, and now they're engaged. And that's a happy story, isn't it? Well, somehow Joseph and Mary got put together. And, you know, Joseph, let's just say he's young, maybe just a little older than Mary. I think he's maybe already started his carpentry business, okay? Where is he living? Is it Bethlehem? That's only 7 miles away from Mary. Would he go to Jerusalem? Yes, Joseph would go to Jerusalem a lot. It's the holy city. It's the capital city. It's where you go on pilgrimage for all the festivals and feasts. Could he have met Mary that way? Perhaps. But how do people meet today? Well, sometimes I think people say it's God arranged, that the odds are almost impossible, but somehow God had us meet each other. Well, I think God wanted Mary and Joseph certainly meet each other. And let's just make Joseph a young person. Why would this young, dedicated, chaste single be of interest to Mary, or vice versa? Why would a young chaste woman planning to stay chaste, meaning stay a virgin, why would you be looking for a mate? In looking at the call of Mary to wed Joseph, and Joseph signed to wed her, you go back to some stories that are not in the Bible necessarily, but other stories, backstories of Mary, that she was likely a servant, a dedicated virgin to the temple, living in Jerusalem, Joachim and Anne's daughter, and in service of the Lord, and the priest there. And we know that Mary knows Zechariah. We know that from a story later. And yet there's something extraordinary about Mary and her holiness that other holy people recognize. And so in Jerusalem, there are some holy people serving the temple, and she's asked to be one of the virgin servants. And so she's going to live in chastity, but of course, up to a certain age, as a Jewish woman, she's expected to live as a virgin. But then she gets to a marrying age, and then usually the Jewish woman should marry. But Mary has this understanding that she is to be a virgin and to stay one. Well, I can imagine the conversations she would have had with some of the holy men and women about this future that she sees for herself. Well, she needs to find a man to guard her, especially if we're going to guess that Joachim and Anne are out of the picture in her life, and now she needs to be in the care of a man. So how's it going to happen? So here you have Joseph somehow coming to Jerusalem, either being from Bethlehem or younger days coming from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. It's very close. Perhaps they've met or knew each other. Or then later on, Joseph starting his business and being up in Nazareth and close by to the commerce center of Sepphoris and working, but still making the trip to Jerusalem because here's a man very devoted to the Jewish faith, and he wants to go to the Jewish capital and its temple and to go and pray there. And Joseph feels a calling to be a worker, and yet he feels a call to be a holy man. And so the two are trying to blend together. And he also feels a call to chastity. Although he's fond of taking care of other people, and in Nazareth we imagine he did, that he took care of other young people as a fatherly figure. As a movie about Joseph of Nazareth portrays it that way, and it'll be on our website eventually on the Formed movie program, so wait for that. But Joseph goes to Jerusalem as a man interested in living in chastity the rest of his life. And he meets a woman looking for chastity for the rest of her life in Mary. And that's really how the magic happens. I know it's not magic. That's how the attraction and the betrothal happens. Now, perhaps I should define that chastity is any unlawful sexual activity, any impurity. It's chastity. It's a high virtue that can be lived in marriage. It's a high virtue in marriage. But chastity would mean this purity of mind, heart, body. Celibacy is refraining from marital relations. Okay, continence is self-control over body. So those three terms sometimes get tossed around. Joseph and Mary are looking to live a continent life, led by their faith, to live in celibacy all through their life, already have been, and to live chastely to the honor and glory of God. Mary is the purest of all, and everything about her, her mind, her heart is pure, her will. And Joseph is quite a match for her as well, in the way that he has lived such a exemplary life of faith and discipline. And so this is what's happening with the two of them. And I thought I should clarify it before I just go any further. There's some stories that mystics tell about all of this. They have it in visions. About 3 different mystics have had visions of all of this taking place. And so I borrow from some of those. The church doesn't expect you to believe in these visions or these stories, but they're helpful to us because it's all quite a mystery to us. But with Mary, it says that some people came forward to betroth her, and usually the men had to pick instead of the woman. But here's an extraordinary woman. A lot of people are watching her, trying to care for her. But who's going to take care of her? And it says that some of the men come up to betroth her, but it's not obvious. And Mary's looking for a sign. You know, back in the time of David in Bethlehem, the prophet comes to Bethlehem and he asks Jesse, the Lord's anointed here somewhere. Can you bring your sons to me? And so they all come. And the prophet says, I don't see the anointed one. I thought I was sure the Lord had your family in mind. And then Jesse says, well, there is another son. He's the shepherd boy out in the fields. And they bring David in, and then the light shines. That's the one. Well, I think this is the kind of story that happens with Mary. Except Joseph is not there originally to betroth her, but then he comes, and the sign is this flowering staff. If you've ever seen statues of Joseph, you may see some of them with a flowering staff. It's a sign, a lily often is portrayed, and that this is the sign that Mary gets. There's, I think, a bigger sign, and that is he's interested in a life of chastity and somehow also being a man that takes care of a woman. You know, that's happened sometimes in history, where there's great close friendship between two celibates take place. I know in my last parish that St. Edward the Confessor had a wife, and they were in that brother-sister relationship. And he did it for the good of his country and for the own progress of his own faith. I know that St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of Avila have a close relationship, man and woman, but not as married, but very close. And I think there's been other stories like that of people who have had close relationships. And I know that as a celibate too, sometimes, that I have a close relationship to other celibates, even of the opposite sex, because of this the certain communion that we have. But for Joseph, he was called to a very, very close union with Mary. And so he offers to wed her because they are pretty matched up well. And she's going to agree to leave Jerusalem and to come to Nazareth and to be his betrothed, to be engaged to him. Well, we run out of time, but fascinating stuff about Mary and Joseph. Joseph was likely a number of years older than her, but not a lot. Not like a 45-year-old marrying a 15-year-old. That just wasn't done then, and it would not have been the case. Mary and Joseph met because they were destined to meet, and through the lines of David, they both kind of come and they meet up, and there's something amazing that's happening there. Is there a chance that Joseph was an older man marrying Mary? Yes, there is. I used to ascribe to it a little bit more than I do now. I'll talk about it in a future tape. This is Father Barry. Good day.